Yeah.
And this is the reimagined, not new, but new KDE Podcast Live. And we are excited to be here. I am Latara Venice, the Director of Culture for KDE. Sometimes I forget. And we have Phil Bynes with us, the CEO, right? Some of you may remember just last week, we were doing something called E-Talks. Well, that's no more. We are here now, and everything is going to be in one fabulous platform right here on YouTube. You may be watching on Facebook, but this is the only time you will see us live on Facebook. You'll see replays, but you won't see us live. So make sure you go over to our YouTube channel and subscribe and join us over there. I see some people joining us, so just make sure you say hello so we know you are here and can see who you are, right? Phil, we're here.
We here. We are here.
How you feel,
Right.
sir?
I feel okay. I mean, we're stepping into some mighty big shoes, but guess what? We're bringing a whole crew to help do it, right?
A whole crew, and they'll
A
meet the
whole
host,
crew.
the other hosts next week. We're excited about that, and we're really here to make sure we're still bringing those relevant conversations, just in a different format, to really help us be who we're called to be as kingdom-driven entrepreneurs. And I love what we're going to talk about today with our special guest, who I'll bring in a little bit here. Like, y'all don't know who it is. Y'all should already know who the first guest was going to be, right? Y'all think we was going to have somebody totally different? You'll see her in a minute. It looks like we lost Phil. Hopefully he'll be back here in a moment. Hello, Angie. Hello, Beth. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Denzel. Everybody who is here. So glad to have you here for what's now a video format of the podcast. So what I want to do is I want to bring in our special guest, like y'all don't know who it is, Miss Shae Bynes, the former host of the KDE Podcast. And I want to begin just having this conversation because we're trying to stay in an hour, but this stuff, sometimes it might get real good, but don't worry, I won't keep y'all for no more than maybe an hour and 15 minutes because I don't want to be on here with y'all a long time. Y'all don't want to see me for 2 hours, maybe not even 3. I don't know, right? Hey, Shae.
Hello. I'm feeling all kinds of emotional over here. Hello.
I'm so excited to be here with you today and to talk about the shifts and the changes, not just with you, but with KDE, because we're always having these conversations about the shifts and the elevations and how this is not a guru movement. So we want to have that conversation today, and I want to kind of start the conversation, and we're just having a conversation, y'all. I don't have a series of questions. We're just gonna flow. We just
coffee shop chat.
Coffee shop chat. So I kind of want to start just with this thought of what was it like for you when you began to sense this elevation was about to happen in this shift?
Specifically with a podcast, I'll enter it that contextually. So this happened. I feel like I've been in phases of letting go. Like, so that elevation thing has been a series of let goes. So which started back in November of 2019, that led to then a few months later, the revelation that Phil was going to be the next CEO, and then him taking the seat of CEO at the end of 2020, and then kind of learning that piece. And then it was like, there was one thing after the other that the Lord slowly was like saying, okay, time for you to let go of that piece, hand this piece off. And so I knew it was coming with the podcast. I didn't know when, but last year, I think it was around October of last year, it became really apparent that now is the time. And so, but I knew it was coming. I wasn't surprised by it because I've been saying for years, even in the very beginning when we didn't have a clue what was going on, we said that this is a movement and it's not centered around Shae, it's centered around Jesus, And so it was just to be expected. And it's due time, and its due time is now. And so I'm excited about it.
When you mentioned this, my first thought was, what are we gonna do? What's gonna happen? I don't understand. What you know how I am with shifts and
yes,
and elevations. I just didn't get it, and I was a little bit mad at you. I was like,
that it was. I gave plenty of notice. had 5 months.
Yeah. And so it took me a minute to kind of get my senses around that. How was it for you, Phil? Did you sense that this was coming for your wife, or were you kind of
Um,
surprised too?
yeah, I mean, it was I was surprised when she said it, but then immediately I was like, well, this sounds like something that God's going to do. Because immediately I started thinking about, okay, we're in a season of acceleration, elevation, and when we elevate in the kingdom, it's always to make space for someone else and something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so immediately I shifted to, okay, this is an opportunity to make space for more people in the movement.
Yeah.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
just had to get myself, right with the ideal and just get comfortable
Mm-hmm.
with it.
Yeah, he was definitely surprised.
Yeah. It was just,
A
I
little
didn't know if he
bomb
was
dropped
in
over lunch.
Oh yeah, a bomb over lunch, just out of nowhere. She's good for that crap. But anyways,
Mhm.
I digress.
Just a little bomb. Oh, by the way. Oh, by the way, did I tell you? So as you were preparing like that very last podcast, which was fire, by
I
the
loved
way,
it.
I so enjoyed listening to KB. I was like, oh, I might listen to his music now. No offense if you're watching, but I
It's good stuff. I've been listening more since that episode.
yeah, and both my boys listen. I was like, okay, I guess I'll give him a little bit of a, listen here. When you knew that you were like, this is my last episode, and I'm going somewhere with this, because when we are shifting and elevating, there are some things that God's going to tell us no more, right? It's time to, we're doing something different here. What was that like for you? Because you knew it was coming, but on that day, and I think within that 24-hour period, I read something on Facebook. What was that like for you?
Heartbreaking, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I had an emotional few days after that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I knew that I knew that I knew, but I still was grieving it, and I was more shook by it than I expected to be honest with you, considering that I knew that this was inevitably coming, because it's been a multi-year phase.
Yeah.
It still hit me. I enjoy doing it.
Mhm.
It's one thing to leave something when you're like, oh, the grace is gone on this thing, and it's so, it's dried up, and it's this. No, it was thriving. I was
Mhm.
enjoying it still. And so it felt like and was a sacrifice to say this thing that I love and I enjoy, that I'm not tired of, and don't feel like the grace is gone, in the midst of a thriving thing that I love,
Mhm.
saying, okay, Lord, it's yours anyway. And
Mhm.
so it's like I knew that here. And so that part wasn't the problem. It was like my mind was clear and my soul was sad,
Oh, yeah.
So it was
Yeah.
like, so that was like that for a few days. And then I went through this in 2 layers, because that was back in October upon the revelation. I already had episodes committed, conversations committed to be had all the way through the end of February, which is how I chose the date that, it would be done. I only had like one space or 2 spaces available, and I was saving one for KB. And so I knew that was going to be the time frame. But then I hit the second wave of sad all over again after I recorded the last episode with KB. And then when it was released, it was like the week before its release is when I actually did it. So I went through the second wave, at that time. I'm going through a third wave, having this conversation with you right now. So it's like, it's a process. It really is. I'm not lying. There's like a tier like right here, and there's like one right there. I'm trying to keep them right here.
Ooh, let's see them. That'll be
goodness.
awesome.
Don't be a brat, Mr. Bynes.
Yes, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're in my Voxer after this, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if I went either.
But this is the wonderful thing. You said a couple of things in that, and then I'm going to give the floor to Phil after you answer this question. There were a couple of things you said. Number one was, I really enjoy doing this. Like, this is it. I love this. I love talking to the people. And I know how much you enjoy the interviews and meeting the people and connecting to people, because you help make a lot of connections over the years with people. I think one of the most recent ones that I'm thinking about is Dub and Dr. Tony, is that fire that has occurred as a result of the work that you do, and you love doing it.
Yeah.
And so Angie said to make you cry. And so
it won't be that hard today.
And so as we're going through like this whole process of shifts and change, it's important too to also know a door won't necessarily close on things that are not good or that you don't enjoy. So my question to you is, how do you still not just obey but honor God in that moment, even when you might not enjoy it?
Yeah. So to me, it was helpful to know the why, right? So I'm more committed to the why. Of course, I'm committed in obedience to how God's leading, but I'm committed to the why of what he's doing. And
Mhm.
so that's why it wasn't a problem, spiritually or in my head, like that, all that stuff was easy, So that was like, it was quick obedience. Like as soon as I knew it, I moved real quick. Like none of
Mhm.
that was a problem. I just had to leave myself the space to process the emotional aspects of it. But it was very easy to honor that because
Mhm.
I have his perspective concerning this movement that is not about me, And
Yeah.
so, and I also know that what he has me walking into is goodness. I'm enjoying my next phase. And so even
Mhm.
though I don't have the full picture of that either, there's still a little bit of tension and mystery in some of the things that he's been showing me since 2020, And
Mhm.
so but there's some things I have a lot of clarity around. And on the one thing that I have a lot of clarity around that's fun for me is that I'm going from being on the host side of a podcast to spending really the next 6 months having a whole lot of conversations as a guest on
Mhm.
podcasts, because the job now is take this message out. You've been in a place inviting people in. Now I need you to go out. Team's going to hold it down, right? So the
Yeah.
movement, I'm still supporting the movement, but I'm supporting it in a different way. And so I'm excited about that. I've already had some conversations that are life-giving to me. So there's goodness in there, but it still is what it is.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. There's goodness in there, but it still is what it is.
Yeah.
And you said something, but I wanna see what Phil has to say. What you got, sir?
Well, when I stepped into this role, God was telling me that I'm a father of the movement. But this movement already had, a mother, right? Over the last, few years and stuff. And I want to know how you feel as the mother, like creating space in the nest for the children of the movement that are coming up. Well, how does it make you feel to see, more and more people stepping up and becoming kind of like the face and voices of the movement, having multiple faces and multiple voices? I'm gonna get that tear. Yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't know that's what I was gonna get, but I'm gonna get it.
I think I shared when I did the episode when we were celebrating the 9 years of the podcast. I think this was the episode where I shared that because I very rarely do solo episodes. And I shared how I was giving the example of Latara. And I was sharing how what a gift it was to see that my yes in this, I could actually experience the multi-generational impact on this side of heaven. Like I can already see in Latara's children, and I already met her grandchild. So I'll be able to see the fruit of this with Latara, AJ and Brayhan, Lil Mama, Gianna Joy. It's like, that's amazing. So that's like, that takes a little, just to give you a snippet of what I think about that. I'm actually being able to see in the natural that, and yet I know and I sense to the spirit what's the enormity of that. I gave you a tiny natural example, but spiritually speaking, well beyond my capability of knowing. That's the ripple effect of this. So it's everything to see us move to shift to people who have been living this thing and walking this thing out and watching them come into this space is really very encouraging. It's awesome because we should see the generational growth of the thing that we're putting our hands to. That's kingdom. So I'm loving it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's so
good.
good. That's so
That's
good.
good.
Oftentimes we talk about advancing the kingdom, right? But as we advance the kingdom, there's always opportunities for us to actually see advancement happening,
Yeah.
right? And so I think that this is uh advancement in a microcosm, us being able to see shifts
Yeah.
in movement, right? it's not looking the same as it always did. Nothing was wrong with the way that it looked before, but there's always progression in the kingdom of God. So we should see natural progressions in our lives and in the things that we're doing. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that whole elevation piece. And as you all were talking, a couple of things came to me. And we're human, right? And so these
Mhm.
shifts and these elevations begin to happen, right? And as they begin to happen, there are things that kind of pop up in our character, like, oh, I thought I had worked on that. I didn't know I was still impatient. Oh, wait a minute, hold up. Whoa, I'm still dealing with that, right? Like one of the things that Shae and I talk about quite often is that she really is unoffendable. I'm still getting there, right? I'm still getting there, right? But I'm growing.
I had
And
many
so-
opportunities last week.
yeah. And so what are some of the things that you struggle with when you see these shifts and elevations begin to happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's interesting if I go back to 2012, there was the excitement, but also the mystery and the not knowing of all this stuff with Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, right? And I was in that space and place for a long time, probably about 3 years before I had any real vision beyond, a month a month at a time or so. But then got into this place of like feeling really solid footing, and what this is about and what we're doing, right? And then growing in that. And then at the time that you get to the point where you're like, I'm flowing. We know what we're doing here. I'm flowing. I'm comfortable in the discomfort and all of those things. And I have clarity around this. The Lord's like, hey, knock, knock, knock. I have a new assignment for you. The stretch is that it's almost like it's not the same as it was 12 years ago because I'm different than 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's elements of that are still extraordinarily uncomfortable because just like 12 years ago, when I'm like, I don't even know what a kingdom driven entrepreneur is. It's like, show me that. Like, what are we doing, Jesus? I feel that way about some of the things he's showing me to come. Not at the same level. It's different, but yet the same in some ways. So that idea of now I'm simultaneously walking out something I feel real strength and authority in, while simultaneously like, oh, what's going on? That's part of the stretch and the challenge. And it would be very easy for me to allocate my time and my energy and my attention on the things that are the things that I feel really comfortable in. I could spend, when I'm looking at my calendar, I could literally spill all of my time with that, but I can't. I have to create the space for the new stuff, even the new stuff that I don't even understand, that I don't have very much details on, and I have to keep creating space. So there's a tension in that for me in this process, for sure.
Yeah, that's so awesome. As you talked about that a little bit, I got the vision of going from glory to glory, right? I remember hearing a pastor, and it might have been I don't remember which pastor it was, but there was a pastor that said going from glory to glory doesn't look like a straight line. It's circular in nature, right? And when you hit one level of glory here, it kisses up against another level. So it's always like that circular, you're coming back around to the same things. It's almost like spiraling up, like a staircase that spirals up. Yeah. You have some overlap. And so I thought that was cool,
That's a good
every
picture.
time we go, we touch upon something that we had to touch before.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
That's good. We touch on something we've never had. I think about stretching. And so, right? We're stretched. And when we are stretched, sometimes it can be difficult, right? And I have a question for you here in a minute. It can be difficult, but the wonderful thing is, like you said, Shae, is that there's so much goodness in the stretch. You know,
there is.
So I don't like stretching,
but you're living it anyway.
But I live in it anyway, right?
Yep.
And learning how to live in that stretch is something that is. It's like, to me, it's phenomenal, even when I'm upset about it, or I feel like, or I do why me? Why me? Like I don't say why me to God no more. I go to Shae or somebody else to go. I don't know why I gotta be doing this. Right?
Uh-huh.
But when you get past that stretch, because the benefits of stretch are to help you to move better and flow
Yeah.
better. When you get past that and you see where you are in your assignment. I woke up this morning and I thought about this podcast and I was like, oh, that's today. And oh, this is a whole other shift, Lord. Oh my gosh, here this elevation goes. But I realized in that moment, like I told Brayhan, I said, oh, I get to do this. Like, this is my life, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is my life. I get this opportunity. And I think if we begin to, even in the midst of whining, or like I say, whying, why are you always whying? Why are you always whying? And I think if we get that we can see the shimmer of hope and the shimmer of the light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah. I made a decision, what, 12 years, I don't know, 10, 11, 10 and a half years ago or so, that I was going to look at this. Is why people hear me say it's a wild and crazy and amazing adventure with God over and over again. Because once I framed it as an adventure, it really helped me to put this whole thing in perspective, and helps remind myself to look at all of these things with childlike faith and wonder, all of it.
Yeah.
And so that takes the burden, because it shouldn't be a burden. Whatever it's grace over right message, right? It's like, no, the thing that I'm called to, there's God's grace is all over that. And I get to do it in partnership with him. So maintaining the perspective that in childlike faith and all like wonder, I'm on this adventure with him, wherever that may lead me, definitely helps me snap me back. If I ever depart, that's the very quick exchange I do in my thought process to snap me right back to the reality.
Yeah. That's good. There's a good question here from Beth Mosley. And hey, everybody who's joined on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you're watching from, if you're watching a replay or listening, hey y'all, hey. But I love this question because it's kind of segueing into where I kind of wanted to go next. She said, when you say it's time to go out with the message, is there a particular industry or community you are particularly interested in reaching? Maybe you haven't gone before.
Okay, so that's a layered question. How do I want to answer this? So the one thing that the Lord made clear on this shift, and this is specifically related to Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur for a second, that my role as it relates to this movement in terms of going out meant, as opposed to staying here talking about Kingdom Driven Entrepreneurship, right? I'm going out there. It starts with this book, Grace Over Grind. I will be talking about Grace Over Grind in a bunch of different other communities, on a bunch of other platforms, taking that message, that foundational message of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneurship into a lot of places and spaces. Now, you said, are there communities that I'm particularly interested in reaching? Not particularly. I'm interested in just seeing however God moves and grooves in this thing. But what I can tell you is that he has challenged me to be really intentional about outreach into places and spaces that in my past, let's say over the last handful of years, I wouldn't have necessarily gone there. So he's asking me to get, how do I want it? So there's some places that you can go where there's such an ease and a flow of being there. There's not a lot pushing against you. And because I've been focused over these last years of building, Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur, I didn't have the time, space, or grace, and wasn't even supposed to be all over in these places where there wasn't like that smooth path in, just like relationally or kind of thought process or whatever in particular places and spaces. So the conferences that I would be invited to, I went into the places where there was just an ease. Like when I went there, it was like family. And I would say no, not because not out of my own strength, but the Lord would have me say no to invitations where it was like there was too much tension around the thing. That's changed. That's completely changed. Now it's about going into places that there might be some tension. There will be some tension around some of these things. I might find myself inviting them to places where folks might even have a little bit of difficulty around my conversation and theology around the Holy Spirit. So I have to be willing, and I am willing, to be clear, to do that. But I'm having to challenge myself to avail myself. If you can imagine, you really have to put your pride off to the table. Because if you're talking about you are intentionally going out to somebody, that's different than someone coming to you. And now it's like, I'm going out proactively into areas that I, in the past, wouldn't have gone out to. I got to, push that down. That first layer, I'm saying way more than I intended. That first layer of that for me looked like, thinking about what I was thinking about. And I'm like, Lord, there's some places that I'm just like, I don't know. I don't know. And he's like, you're going to go in. And I also believe I'm going to be surprised that maybe some that 3 or 4 years ago, that would have been a problem. It actually will be smooth sailing now. And other ones, there might be some tension. Either way, it's none of my business. That's my job, to be evangelistic, to be apostolic and evangelistic, in nature right now. And so that also looks like collaboration in some new ways that I couldn't do before when I was focused on building here. So that's what that looks like. The second part of that, Beth, is that I'm also called into areas related to government. So that most of that will probably be like private. I probably won't be super public with a lot of that stuff, but he is calling me to other spheres of influence as well. And I don't know what that looks like. That's the mysterious stuff.
Yeah, that's good. That was a loaded question.
I was like, let me take this bit by bit.
Yeah, that was loaded. But what you did was you literally laid out a process for people. You said a number of things in there, especially when you mentioned time, space, and grace. Right? That's something you're always like, because I get frazzled, y'all. Y'all don't even know how I'll be off in her boxer. I get frazzled. And the last few months has been a frazzling stretch, right? And one of the things you said to me, because of all the things, right, that I'm called to, and it just is what it is. You said, make sure that you have the time, the space, and the grace. And that immediately made me put, like pause, like, oh, well, that's easy. So I started to fix, and that helped me to be able to really structure my day and my season, right? So that is so important. You literally laid out a process for people. Another thing is maturity. What you're talking about this whole time is maturity, right? It takes maturity to have childlike faith, because most of us want to be grown in God's presence, and he'd be like, oh, please.
You can be simultaneously spiritually mature and childlike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's good. So this, I love that you shared that in that layered format like that, because, and if you didn't hear, you need to go back and listen to everything she said, because she laid out a process for you to be able to shift and elevate in your kingdom assignment, because God's not going to keep you in the same space.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear that? Wow. You have anything, Phil? Because Teresa Horn has a question.
Yeah, I'll say this. How does it feel right now to show up in these spaces being the chief fire igniter? Because it's one thing to be like that at home, be fiery at home. But I know from just knowing a little bit since I sleep with you and all, that sometimes God has you showing up in spaces and lighting a whole fire, and you didn't plan on doing it. So share a little bit about that.
In the beginning, that was like shaking me a little bit. I would explain this to you, Phil. This is what I'd say. I said, I felt like I was outside of myself, watching myself. Like, so I'd be in these places, and having conversations with different communities and stuff like that. And I'm listening to myself, and I'm listening to how it's coming out of my mouth. And I'm watching the faces and the reaction to what's coming out of my mouth. And I'm thinking, Shae's thinking over here, what in the world are you doing? But I can't stop because it's all up in here. And so sometimes after I'm done, I'm like, wait a second, what just happened? What just happened? And, I just had this experience just a couple of weeks ago. I was in a community and speaking, and I'm looking at their faces, and they're all just like, and the woman who had me there was like, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this like 5 times. Like, and I don't mean to like overwhelm, but this stuff has been bubbling up for so much. And now the assignment is the assignment. And so it just comes out like however it comes out. And it's always with grace and love and joy and all the goodness, but it also comes out with some weight on it too. I'm not going to lie, because I surprise myself.
Yeah, you be bringing some fire. So
Like you
I
don't know
don't.
what happened until it happened. You're like, oh,
You be bringing some
oh
fire.
Jesus.
You do. So Teresa asked, and I you may be able. You're good with deciphering questions. She said, "How are you sitting part of you down? You move with your hands, which I totally understood. The pride or the part of you that doesn't want to be uncomfortable like that."
Okay, I think I understand what she's saying. So in that particular instance, I can just kind of walk through that example. So when I'm like, ooh, I'm going to have to reach out to folks that actually might reject me, that I didn't even want to go in my past, I didn't even want to go to anyway, and I might actually face rejection. And then it's like I had to sit with that thought for a second. Why do I feel some kind of way about that? I'd only feel some kind of way about that because there's just that little bit of ego up in there, that little pride in there that's like, you don't want not the fact that you're getting rejected, but the fact of who you're getting rejected from. Let's be clear. I don't have a problem with rejection in general. I would go, and when the Lord's like, also there's like these larger platforms and things that are just like, whatever. When he's saying to go to those, I don't care if they reject me or not. I don't care. I don't have an issue with rejection in general. The thing I had to sit with is why I was feeling this kind of way about being rejected by particular people.
Mhm.
And so once I realized what that was, kind of sitting with God on that, I'm just like, what is that? What do you do when you do these things? You give it to God. And it's like, you know what? I trust you. I'm not going to sit here and not do things out of worry and concern, or certainly not out of ego, to not do the things that you call me to do. I will do it uncomfortable. I'm still uncomfortable, but I will do it in the discomfort. And I believe that there's going to be some surprises for me in the process of walking this out in discomfort. Things that I've told fairy tales in my head about that won't even come true at all. And then other things that, work out just great. And some things that will be exactly how I thought it might go. But none of that is my business. My business is to do the King's business. And that's just it. And so I'm fully persuaded of that. And so that's why I continue to move despite the discomfort.
Mhm.
Yeah. So if I was deciphering what you said, it sounds like you're saying like you're showing up in spaces like, I don't even want to be here in the first place, and you got the nerve, the unmitigated gall, the audacity to reject me. I don't even want to be here anyways. But you have to shut that down because that's real prideful. Because you
That would so that would be the Phil Bynes version of that. That wouldn't be my dialogue. But in essence, yeah. I mean, in essence,
Mhm.
yes. Right.
Mhm.
And so,
Mhm.
I mean, but that just is what it is. That's just being super honest, more honest than
Yeah.
I prefer to be right now. But it just is, it's the truth. And I'm
Ooh,
also
that's
sitting
good.
here paranoid, like people are gonna be like, listening to this and be like, I wonder when she reaches out to me if I was one of those people. And it's like, it's none of that. It's just like, but the other thing is I'm like, Lord, this is the other thing. It's just been my prayer as I'm walking this thing out, even in the discomfort. I'm saying, God, give me your heart for this person. Give me your heart for this situation. Give me your heart for this, so that I can just continue to so I can capture that and walk in that, so that it doesn't become the thing that's uncomfortable for me now becomes a thing that's I'm full of joy to do. I mean, that's where I want to get. I'm not looking to stay in this place of, oh, this is super uncomfortable. I don't want to stay in that place. I don't want to just be like, I'm doing it because out of obedience. So I just need to do this. I don't want to stay there. It's where I am now, but I don't intend to stay there. I intend to, as I move, as I do it, to really capture his heart. And I'm not going to wait to capture his heart before I go. I might be waiting a long time. So I'm just going to go, and I'm going to believe that as I do it, as I see faces, as I see emails, all those things, I'm going to be capturing his heart, because that's my ongoing prayer with him, and that I will be able to do it with joy and in a short time, to be honest. That's my prayer and my belief.
That's good. That's good. I love what Beth said, because it really is the heart of the movement, and how Shae has really developed our team, right? And we have these conversations all the time about team building and the kingdom. And I love what she said. She said, Shae's announcement and and challenge prompted Latara to do with her business what Shae was having to do. Lord, did it. Specifically, Shae had to know the team would steward the movement.
That's right.
So now Latara has to develop her family and team to hold down her movement. There's that Jehovah sneaky, as Shae says. This is huge. And hear what she says. This is what I love, because this is what we do. This is a heart of the movement. It's a part of the heart. This is huge if we get that it's actually for all of us.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all this stuff, it's not only about us. It's about us and our involvement in it, but it always extends beyond us. And so just like I said, this thing is not about me. We should all have that idea that what the thing that we're doing isn't about us. Like everything I'm saying is just should be the posture of all of our hearts is we're doing kingdom things. Like this is that kingdom life.
Yeah, that's good. Ooh, what you got, Phil?
Hold it loosely. Hold it loosely.
It's levels to this maturity thing, and we kind of touched on this last week in an expansion talk, where we're talking about how kingdom is more than just about us. It's about submitting what we want, our mission, to the mission of the King. That's how we advance the kingdom. So yeah, that's so good, and thank you for being so mature to help lead us into that as well.
Oh my God.
Let's talk, because you cannot move in any assignment, whether God is calling you to a movement, to a moment, or whatever that looks like. You can't do that by yourself. There has to be resources, that's the people, places, and things, to help support you and move you further into where you're called to be.
Yeah.
So when you began, this is kind of going back, because when you began the whole process of like, okay, I have my VA, it's time to really build a team. Yeah. What were some of the things you were looking for? Because I think that's important, because too many of us try to shift and elevate and have movements by ourselves.
Yeah. So I realized that, I think this was in 2015 when I realized, okay, it's going to be after Antonina left. And when Antonina left, which was July of 2015, and then I went through that summer, and it was just basically, it had been me, Antonina, and one VA. Okay. And then when she left, it's like me and a VA. And then that's when I took my break for a few months. Latara, you showed up, even though you didn't like me, and held some things down for me online for us. And I got with Jesus, like, what is this? What are we doing? And that that September, at the end of that summer, kind of going into the fall, I really captured God's heart on the fact that, yes, you're supposed to continue. Yes, your destiny was in the journal of somebody else. And yes, I'm with you, and I'm going to give you people, So I knew at that time, sitting in that prayer house in Redding, California, that he was going to bring people. That was the same moment in that little prayer house that he gave me the vision for Igniters, which is now a whole Igniters mentoring community. But at that time, he said, I want you to pour into hungry people, period. And so I started off with the 12. So when I started off with the 12, and you were one of them, Latara, it was very quickly that he's like, and you're not going to be out here mentoring one-on-one folks for long. You're going to have a team. You're going to have a team of people who are going to mentor. So it was like he was giving me, as he was giving vision around things, I'm able to grab hold of that and say, okay, even if I don't know exactly what this looks like, who the people are yet, I didn't know Phil was going to be the CEO. I knew someone was going to be the CEO. It was like there was a gap of about 3 months between knowing there was going to be a new CEO and knowing Phil was going to be that CEO. So it's just like just allowing God to continue to give me vision around things and just coming into agreement with that. And what I would do is, even if I didn't have people, and we're still like this to this day, hopefully Phil carries this on, it's very helpful, is maintaining a document of these are the needs. We don't know who the people are yet, but these are the needs. And as soon as So now, as soon as someone shows up, a door opens, or the resources, if that was the issue, are available, you can move, right? You're not sitting in this, whatever. You have already positioned yourself for increase. And so that's how I kind of dealt with that year over year over year over year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
good.
cute how you said hopefully Phil will continue on with that because like is as if the advisor would ever let me not continue on with that. You would try not to come too hard at me because
That
I'm
would be
still your
useless. Yeah.
husband. But
Yeah.
you'll keep dropping little hints. I don't even try it.
I love you, Mr.
But
Divine.
anyways, I will continue on, my love. I
Yes.
have the list of the positions that you've already showed me. Mhm. I know.
That is
I
so
know my
hilarious.
role. I know my strengths, and I know my place. That's why I can be trusted. That's why she can hand this baby off to me because
Yes.
God knew I was going to
Yeah.
handle the baby the way that she tells me to handle the baby,
That's good. That's
and
good.
add my little fatherly pieces here and there. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it had nothing to do with the fact that you were her husband, just that God was
It
like, this
didn't.
is it. He's the
Yeah.
CEO. And I think it's important. You mentioned a couple of things, and one of the things you mentioned was timing, right? It's
Yeah.
important because we have to be, I'm not going to say ready, but let's say prepared,
Yes.
right? For the move, because sometimes God will shift you like that.
Yes. You're like whiplash. What just happened?
And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And the thing is that you can try to procrastinate. You can try to, okay, let's just say I can try to procrastinate. I'm just going to speak the truth. But what happens is God will lovingly bother you with that
Yes.
thing. He will
Yes.
bother you with that thing. And if he's bothering you with it, then it means it's really important for you to step up and do what you have to do. So what I realize, and maybe this, Phil or Shae, is that in those moments when he's calling you, right? He's telling you you're prepared. Let's shift in this. And so I just need you to move, and learning how to move without knowing.
It's a practice. It's the muscle to be exercised.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I kind of want to dig into that because I think too many times when we're given these assignments, we wait for, oh, I got to get a degree. Oh, I got to have a title. Oh, I got to have a building. Oh, we were talking this morning about, how do we start with the lighting and all of those? Just show up, right? Get your ring light, do this. And so we kind of, Phil was like, oh yeah, don't worry. We'll get you that. Don't worry about that. But I said, over time, we'll elevate, right?
Yes.
It's just being prepared and ready to cross over whatever the Jordan looks like for you so you can get over into that promised land, right? And so how can someone learn like this whole part of when God says go? What does that look like for you, Shae? Let's say Phil too, because in our movement, we move fast. 1 minute Shae could be like, hey, you're the team lead. Hey, Phil is the director of culture. And in less than a month or so, you're like getting a 6 o'clock in the morning call going, things are about to change a little bit. And then you hear director of culture and you go, what? What? And I mean, that's how it and we got to be ready. What's that like for y'all?
Oh, get ready, stay ready. I really do believe in, I mentioned earlier about the exercising that muscle, because when you exercise the muscle of movement without knowing the things, which is the very nature of faith, Selah, when you exercise that muscle, what happens is you get momentum. And when you get momentum, then the time that it takes from the thought to your willingness to engage God on it, or engage however you need to engage on it, it gets shorter,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about faith leaps. Some of the things that we've experienced that felt like leaps, they actually weren't leaps. If you think about it, it felt like a leap because it happened quickly, but it was after a process. And that moment where I got to you on Voxer and I said that felt like but it had actually been years in the making. So our limited perception, which is why we want to keep heaven's perspective, and our limited perspective, we're thinking we're taking leaps. We're taking leaps. You're not taking leaps, man. You're taking a step. And at the time, and you continue to take steps, and then you're building momentum, then in those suddenly moments that aren't really so suddenly, they're just suddenly in the moment in your eyes, but have been the process of the momentum gained from you continuing to exercise that muscle that take place. So we stagnate, or at worst, we like negate completely and miss out on what God desires us to do because we won't take the step. Even if we think it's a leap, it's like, how do I take, if I thought something was a leap, I'm like, okay, Lord, this feels like a leap. So help me see what the step is so that I can then come in agreement with a step that doesn't feel like a leap, right? Everyone's leap is different. Some people that would take something as a leap for the other person, because based off of their risk aversion, other things or whatever, the idea of a step versus a leap is very different per person. So the general advice across the board is, if to you it feels like a leap, then you can go to God around getting his perspective on what's the step so that you can come in agreement with a step and you're not feeling like you are leaping just out here and going too far and too fast, which is a thing, you know?
Yeah, that's good. That's
and,
good.
and my answer to that is something that God said to me a long time ago when he showed me the example of Gideon. And that's go in the strength go in the strength that you have. Have I not sent you? Right? If God is sending you into a particular place, if he's giving you an assignment, you already have the strength that you need for that assignment. Now, there's obviously muscles that you have to grow to be extra proficient in it, but you are proficient enough for the assignment at the level that he wants you to start, right? And so that's how I would answer that.
That's good. I love that. I love that because you guys took something that is so, sometimes when we think about leaps, we fantasize about that. You took it and you made it practical and you put wisdom in the midst of it, because that's very important. It's like when someone says, God told me to quit my job. And the first thing I go is, did he give you the next step, or did he just, and then they quit and then stuff starts happening. I'm like, but God told me to do this. And I'm going, okay, so let's figure out a way to help you start bringing, because you still have to live in this world. So
your bills are still coming,
but you still have to live in it. So I love that, because y'all already know the practical part is really important to me.
Oh my God.
And I love that, as I think about, like, I talk about grace leaps all the time, but whenever you read about my grace leaps and I'm writing this book, you see a process. So that is really important. And I always tell people, I'm realizing that my subtly moments, it's like God preparing us. God prepared me and Phil to be here. When we started the E-Talks, we didn't know what that was going to be like.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know either.
You didn't know either. Yes. We just knew we were supposed to do this thing called E-Talks, because what that did is it first off helped us to build the chemistry, and that's my brother, helped us to build the chemistry and the flow of how we have a conversation. Yeah. And then when we had that 10 minute, I was sitting there, and all of a sudden they said, well, Latara, you can take. I was like, what? But I realized it was all
and you had a whole concept. Let's be clear.
And I had a whole concept that came about because it had already I was like, oh, Shae could be doing this, and then we could do this. But I didn't think it was going to be me and Phil here. But God knew different, because he had been preparing us. He had been making us ready.
Yes.
For the moment.
So it wasn't a leap.
Yeah. It wasn't a leap.
And
it seems like a leap because of who we are.
Yeah, it seems like one.
And even if I go back in the capsule, because you, Latara, you were used to doing lives, right? You're used to speaking. Shae's used to speaking. I wasn't used to doing that. So even before we did the expansion talks, he took me through this this period of time with doing the lives on Facebook with Shae Bynes for just 30 minutes, because I was used to having a rapport with her. So even that, he was preparing me to be ready for a conversation with you. Yeah. And so, he knows all the things. He's put us in position. Yeah. And in hindsight, we can go back and see that he's been preparing us in the process the whole time.
That's right.
That's good. That's good. And that he wants you to have a sense or level of comfort in the process. It might feel uncomfortable, but he's bringing, it's like, because, okay, that's your wife. So you guys have a good rapport. And then the E-Talks come up and Shae's like, oh, I think you begin with Latara, because she knew you and I had already been building a relationship, right? And getting to know each other better. It's like, yeah, he's good with, and Latara has done lives and she's done all of this. And so I love how he does that. It's like, yeah, this is going to be a little hard, but look at this comfort I'm bringing you.
Yes.
Look at this reassurance.
Yeah.
I'm bringing you in this moment.
That's good.
I love that.
That's good.
I love that. And that's like a good father, right?
Yes.
You know, I think about the guy, his baby daughter was getting her ear pierced, and he was holding her, he was crying, but he made sure to keep her comfortable, even though he was crying, and he turned his head so she wouldn't see. But in that moment, he still gave her comfort.
Yes.
You know, and I love that about God, because that's just how he is.
Yes. You're talking about that. You're talking about that. And that's actually, I'm thinking about how that applies to my right now in the uncomfortable things.
Yes.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about all these little spaces of comfort and my discomfort in the new, not the talking about grace over God. I could do that with my eyes closed all day. I love it. But like in the new things he's calling me to, I can already identify, thanks to this conversation, thanks, Latara, I'm already identifying a few things that he and his just goodness have done that are my comfort spots in the midst of the discomfort. I can think of 3 of them off the bat. So I love that. I love that.
That's good. That's good. So what about this new? I mean, we talked a little bit about it.
Sure.
Tapped into it kind of, sort of. What about this new? I know you're out there doing, like, every time I turn, I'm like, shit, another podcast?
Yeah, you're going to see a whole lot more of those.
Shit, another one? Oh my gosh, shit, another one? So with your new, what are some of the things you might be able to share with us right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So in December, when I was sitting with God around, okay, I have this 5th anniversary edition of Grace Over Grind coming out, which comes out next week, by the way. You guys, it doesn't matter if you read the first one, you need to get the second one. Amen. All right. So when I was sitting with God around what that looks like, how to steward that in the season that I was in, it was interesting. The Holy Spirit nudged me to go look up how many copies of Grace Over Grind sold in those first 5 years of the book. So I went back, I just looked at the US numbers, but in the US, it was around 10,000 books in the 5 years. And I heard this question: what would it look like to do in 1 year that took 5 years? And so I was sitting with that question, and I was realizing he was inviting me into engaging differently with this than I did on the first one, or any other book for that matter. So, and then I was tying it to, he did say I was supposed to be evangelistic. So now comfort space in the midst of going out there and evangelistic and going and connecting with other people. Here's the message that you live. It's your life's message. You just can go out there as Shae Bynes, author of Grace Over Grind, go out there with this message. And so I made a goal to have 100 conversations about Grace Over Grind in 6 months. So I'm not looking at it as a book launch that's like, woo, we put it out there and then we stop talking about it. I'm looking at it like a 6 month at least launch. I'll get with God and see if it's going to extend past that. But at least for the next 6 months, I'm going to be out there talking about Grace Over Grind in whatever places and spaces God's opening doors for me to do so. And so I've created the space for that in my schedule to make that possible, because the one thing someone on the launch team asked me, like, what's your non-negotiable as it relates to marketing this book? And I said, I won't grind. I'm not going to grind to share a message about Grace Over Grind. How that look? I'm not doing that. So, but I am intentional about creating the space. So I'll be doing a lot of that. I'm still mentoring, I have Kingdom Catalyst. And so I still mentor and advise in that capacity. But there's going to be a lot more. I've got conferences I'm speaking at. I'm not going to be speaking at a ton of conferences because I don't want to travel. I don't want to increase my travel dramatically, but I am speaking a little bit more than I was in the past. And then definitely speaking virtually a lot more than I was. And so that's enough for me right now. Like there's a lot of things. The other stuff that I told you I don't know much about. I have 1 or 2 assignments that I need to do. And I believe God's going to reveal more to me as I do the things he told me to do several months ago that I'm creating the space to now do, And so that's what it's going to look like for the next 6 months. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about Grace Over Grind a whole lot, and a whole lot of different contexts with groups of different types, communities of folks. And I'm excited about it. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Did y'all hear the part that it doesn't matter if you read the first one, but you need to read the second one?
You need to read the second one. You do.
Oh, okay.
I've read it. I've read that expanded, and I was like, oh, she really, hold up, we up leveling here, Lord. Okay.
I really liked the first book. I really did. I felt really good about the first book. I still feel really good about the first book. But when this one was done, I just went back and read it, and I was like, man, like, I thought I liked the other one. I really, really like the way this one came out. I just think it's just gonna serve at an even greater level, which I'm really excited about. So and it'll be if you go to graceovergrind.com right now, you can get on the notification list. But if you're already on Kingdom Driven Entrepreneurs email list, you're not going to miss hearing about it. And I'm going to do some fun stuff for bonuses during launch week, starting sometime next week. March 7th is when we kick off.
Yeah, fun stuff. Y'all need to go on and get on over to Grace Over Grind. Go on. But I tell y'all, go on.
Yes.
This has been
up level your Grace Over Grind living,
Listen, I'm up leveling. I was reading. I was like, oh, hold up. I'm missing out on some stuff here. Hold on, Lord. Here I come. So
yes, because I've had to go a whole lot of levels up of Grace Over Grind living since the first one 5 years ago.
Yeah. A whole lot.
You can
write Grace Over Grind for almost every area of life at this point.
Listen, I'm like, what's the next one going to look like? The second expanded edition in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 yeyears, to the 10th anniversary edition. What we doing, Jesus?
Man, Phil, you got anything? This been good, y'all.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'm gonna be a brat here. So if you feel like you don't need the expanded edition, that means that you haven't done anything with the original edition, because you should have been, up leveling to the point where you need a second dose. So that's all I'm gonna say. And I'm not just saying that because Shae Bynes is my wife, and that means money for the household, because in the grand scheme of things, selling books ain't the move to make the money.
We don't write books to make. Let me stop.
That's so good. I love that one.
That $3.21, boy, I tell you. Glory to God.
Did y'all hear that? That royalty, right? People think that royalty is real big. You'd be like, nah, that royalty don't be all of that.
No, it's not.
I love that. Winona, I love you shared that you're sharing this with your network. And Teresa says she can't wait for her new book. And I know Winona, and she shares the stuff with her people. So yes, thank you for that. This has been such a great conversation, Shae Bynes.
Thanks for having me as the first guest. This was fun.
I already knew that if I didn't have you as the first guest, or at least the second one, you'd have been like, what we doing?
What about me?
So what about me? And we'll have her back actually as a part of our co-host panel when there's certain, conversations that we want to have, and we think, someone may be a good person to bring on with us. We will have more people, but you will see Shae. You're going to see other team members. Next week, you get to meet the other 5 hosts. I had to see how many of us were here. The other
for each letter of the word podcast, there's a host.
Yes, there is. And I love that. That we are shifting in this. Well, we have shifted, and here we are, and that we learned a lot about elevating and shifting in our kingdom assignments. This is only going to get gooder and gooder. I know that's gooder and gooder.
And I love, by the way, that we are going to be having, because this is right at the heart of the movement as well, but the fact that we're going to be having multi-generational conversation is going to be like multi-generational. It's going to be multi-ethnic. It's going to be multi-gender. Well, there's only 2, but multi-gender. It's going to be, we've got, people who are in different aspects of business. You've got people who are in different stages of business. The fact that we get to bring the diversity of that to these conversations is going to be so electric. And so I'm really excited about that. I mean, one of our core foundations at the heart of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur is that unity and collaboration in the body of Christ, and that we're going to be an expression. While there's tons of personal branding happening, I'm not coming against personal branding. Let's be clear. Don't make something that I'm not saying. As much personal branding is out there, and all of these things, and being the expert to lead the people and the things and that, we're going to be modeling the beauty of collaboration right up front, right in the core aspects of these conversations. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a model that's going to make a difference in the kingdom. And I'm excited about it. And I thank you all for doing it.
Yeah.
So
And
good.
one level of diversity that you miss with that is that not everybody that's going to be a host is on our team. It's not like
That's true.
everybody's part of Team KDE. They're
Yes.
connected to the movement in some way, shape, or form, and
That's
they've
right.
shown themselves to be faithful and show up. And
Yes.
that's how they got here. And
Yes.
that's what the body looks like. That's what the organism looks like.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
gonna be
So
good.
good.
That's good. And even the invited, guest co-hosts, they won't all be team members. They'll be,
Right. Probably
you
most of them
know,
won't be, right?
no, not a,
Yes.
won't be. And I love this whole process because it's taught me personally as an entrepreneur how to do this thing, right?
Yes.
The kingdom way. And so because God's not about isolation and competition and and just being a you. It's, personal branding is great. I brand myself. Y'all see my shirt.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
haven't
Looks
seen it.
like, don't hear what I'm not
But
saying.
she's
But we
not
need
saying
models
that.
with this. Yes.
Right? She's
Yes.
not saying that. What she's
Not at all.
saying is capture the whole picture
Yes.
of an integrated way of doing business
Yes.
and moving in what God is telling you to do in your assignment, because far too many of us are doing it by ourselves. Shae, I'm so glad you joined us today. I really
Thanks for
am.
having me. It was super fun.
I'm-
And those tears dried up after like 20 minutes. So I was
I
good.
know.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jesus.
You'll go settle in a minute and you'll hear my voice. I already know how that's gonna go. And so,
Oh,
she gonna
Jesus.
get to thinking. I'm just glad you didn't get hot up in here, because I was like, "Oh Lord, don't let her get hot. If she get hot, we're gonna be in trouble."
Oh,
So
Lord.
this was good. Listen, we will be here every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next week, you get to meet all the awesome co-hosts, find out who they are, how they flow, and what their excitement is around this whole shift in the KDE podcast. So you will be able to actually see the replay here on YouTube and on Facebook. We'll put the replay there as well. And we're going to work on making sure you still have audio as well for those of you who like to listen. The audio is not going anywhere. It's just going to be a different way of hearing it. All right. So thank you, Shae Bynes. Thank you, everybody. Bynes, don't go nowhere. Don't go nowhere. Y'all stay where you at.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So thank you guys for joining. Hey, share this with somebody who needs this message today.